What's the best photo paper for landscape photography? Well, we've got 8 of the best. Let's find out. Come on. Great to see you all again. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're looking at printer paper and we're going to find out which is the best one for your landscape photography. Now, it's one of those questions that gets asked numerous times and there isn't really a real answer, but we're going to endeavour to get the best advice for you today for it. But there's so many different types, so where do you start? Gloss, texture, matte, luster? There's just so many. We're going to try and break it down and let you know what each one of them does, why you should use it, and more importantly, when. All the papers that we're using today are Photospeed papers. Now, I have no affiliation with Photospeed at all. All of these papers are purchased by myself. It's a brand that I've used for a good couple of years. I really rate them. And in order to keep as much consistency with the paper as possible, I've wanted to stick with one brand, but we've got 8 different types and we're going to try them all and go through the differences. With our prints today, we're going to endeavour to keep a good level of consistency. So what we're going to do is a base image on a paper of choice, and then we're going to keep exactly the same settings for the remaining papers so we get the same print, albeit the different characteristics of each paper will come through and hopefully show us something a little bit different on each one. We've got 3 gloss papers today and we've got 5 matte papers. Now, I generally use 2 different papers myself for printing, which is Photospeed Platinum Brighter for anything sort of glossy and contrasty. This is a luster paper, and what luster means is it's not a gloss finish, but it's got a slightly glossy edge to it. But because the paper itself has got sort of micro texture to it that you wouldn't really see, it doesn't reflect back. So it's a great compromise between a matte paper and a gloss paper. It's ideal for when it's framed. It doesn't get all those reflections like a gloss paper would. I do tend to avoid gloss papers for that exact reason. The end user wants a print that they're going to be able to look at and see through a frame, but you don't want any reflection back, and gloss paper does have a habit of doing that. But there are several papers that you can get now which are gloss finish but unglazed, so you can get various different types of paper to combat this. But my second choice of paper, which is a matte finish paper, is Photospeed NST Bright White, and both these papers are absolutely superb. They've got a really high GSM. GSM is grams per square meter, and it essentially refers to the weight of the paper as such. You know, it depends obviously on the thickness and everything of the paper, but the weight of the paper is the GSM. They're both 300 or above, and those are going to be my 2 control papers. We're going to test every other paper around those particular settings for those images on there, and we're going to try and address which image to do on which paper and why. If you're not printing your images, you have to ask yourself why. It's the perfect time. We're all in lockdown, there's very little to do, and it's an ideal opportunity to start printing your pictures. At the moment, if they're just gathering dust on your hard drive, they're not going to be seen by anyone. Printing really is the best way to serve an image. And for me, a picture isn't finished until it's printed. Once you've got that print, you can look at things in a very different way with it. It really does bring an extra quality to your photography, I feel. And each photo, it deserves to be printed. You know, they shouldn't just gather dust on a hard drive. They should be seen, and it's the best way to show them. And a good quality paper is the icing on the cake. It will make your picture absolutely pop. So what is an ICC profile? Essentially, it's a set of data that deals with the input and the output of colour according to the International Colour Consortium. And it basically tells your print how your paper and your colour and your inks are going to behave on there, and it will make an adjustment according to that. When you buy a paper, you can usually find most manufacturers will put an ICC profile on there, and it will be a generic profile, something for, you know, a standard paper, standard printer. But equally, you can find that there's printers and inks to match. So for example, I could go and download a Canon Pro 1000 ICC profile to use on a certain paper, and it would work and it would give me a really good finish. But you can take that to the next level, and that's what we've done with Photospeed. Basically, each of the papers that you buy from them, they offer you the chance to have a custom-made ICC profile. So I can stipulate that I'm using a Pro 1000 and I'm using Canon ink, for example, or you could stipulate that you're using an aftermarket ink, and you can print out a control sheet on each of the papers that you want to use, and they will give you a custom ICC profile so you can upload to your computer. It only takes a couple of seconds to do, and it will take your print to the absolute next level, and I highly recommend doing this. One thing which I didn't know myself about ICC profiles is after somewhere between 6 months to a year, they can change, so it is worth redoing them. And I've just had mine all completely redone for the 8 papers that we're using today. So most important thing with printing, we've got our monitor calibrated, we've got all of our ICC profiles done by Photospeed and sent, and they're all installed, so we're ready to go. Okay, so we have our test papers all printed now, and I have to say there's a few surprises. NST Bright White has got a very slight, and I mean very slight, edge on the others in terms of its brightness. I believe this is pretty much down to the temperature of the paper being, you know, a very much a crystal white paper. But yeah, it is noticeably just a fraction brighter than the other pictures. But that said, the white rendition on this paper is absolutely the best out of all of them. I've been really impressed with the colour rendition on all of these papers, but the NST Bright White really has performed at the highest level, I'd say. I'm really impressed with the cotton etching paper. I wasn't expecting to like a textured paper, as it's not something I generally choose to use, but the detail on this paper and the D-Max with the blacks on the image is superb. I'm really impressed with this, and it really adds to the image on the textured finish. But as I say, each one's performed well. Colour rendition's very good. The NST Bright White was our control paper, so therefore we actually processed the picture and printed it on the basis of the settings that we would use for that, and all of the other papers had to follow those same settings. So the NST Bright White did have an edge, but all papers performing superbly, so hats off to Photospeed. I'm really impressed, and the ICC profiles have made all the difference, I feel, because the rendition is just perfect. So the following images is basically a selection from each of the papers and a section of to make one picture, so hopefully you can see the difference. Now, these pictures, they were taken with a regular camera, 105mm, about a foot away, and then they were cropped in and zoomed. So you're looking at about probably about 1000% really. So obviously on a smartphone you're not going to be able to see the detail, but hopefully on something like a 4K TV you're going to really notice the differences in texture on these papers. It's a very difficult thing to show, so unfortunately this is the best I can do with it really. I'll show all the individual pictures afterwards as well, so you can get a better idea, but I just wanted you to be able to see a comparison between all of them, so you can see the differences in paper itself. Just to clarify as well, these pictures are straight out of camera. They've had no adjustments made to them, as I didn't want to taint the pictures in any way, so it's literally the quality will look not so great, but remember we're zoomed in at a really high degree on these. Okay, first paper on here is the cotton etching, and as I say, this was a bit of a surprise for me. I didn't think I'd like this paper as much as I did, but the etching really does have something, and I'm really impressed by it. The blacks are very good in this, and the D-Max on the paper is really superb, but the detail has surprised me on this one. But the colour rendition, very good. I can't fault it. It's really impressive. I really like it, and as I say, a bit of an eye-opener for me, this one. Okay, the next paper is the old favourite really. This is NST Bright White, and I think I have to give this paper the overall win on this particular image. I mean, everything about it is superb. I love the temperature of the paper. I love the it's a smooth finish paper, but it's a very slight texture in there compared to something like smooth cotton, but the overall colour rendition, the D-Max, it's just superb. Really is hands down, I think, a winner on this one, but so close with the others. I'm really torn with a few of them. Moving on to Platinum Cotton, and again, I love the smoothness of this particular one. It's a really, really nice paper, and the image, I'm torn. I think the image looks really nice on this one because the without the texture, it just shows off a little bit more. I mean, I'm going to say the same thing about all of these papers, really. It's the colour rendition, the detail, and the D-Max on it. It's just brilliant. It's a different look. I really, really do like it. I'm really impressed by it. But yeah, maybe there is a split decision here, and the NST might come in second with this one. It really is a beautiful paper. Okay, the next paper is the Platinum Etching, and this is probably the one with the most notable texture on there. I do love the heavy GSM on this paper. It really does work very well with it, and the texture's really nice. But I have to say, I do prefer the cotton etching in terms of texture on this. But the image quality is very good. The D-Max is very good on it, and again, the colour rendition is good. It's quite deep on this one. I think it's like I say, a slight different temperature on the paper, but it does make it a little bit of a deeper colour on there. So it'd be something that obviously we'd iron out in post-processing and the use of the profiles. Final paper is the Smooth Cotton, and again, I have to say, for this particular image, smooth is really, really nice. I love how the print looks even more detailed than maybe some of the textured finish ones because of the smooth nature of the paper. Again, I think there's a slight difference in temperature on this one. I don't think the paper is as white as the NST, but it might just be my eyes on this one. But the finish is absolutely fantastic, superbly detailed, great colour rendition. It's just a great print. I'd be really happy to print all of my work on this particular paper, I have to say. And I'm seriously considering a switch to a smoother paper now from the NST Bright White, because I just like the way it flows on these images. If I have a texture print later on, we might find that view changes, but this particular print, because of the nature of the image, where it's you know, a misty, sort of very painterly scene, I think these very, very smooth papers really are a winner on there, and they do show the image with a little bit more detail. And it just suits this particular image that much better, I think. We've got the results in now for our test papers on the luster paper test, and I have to say again, I'm quite surprised on these. They're definitely very, very different in these particular papers, and in all fairness, I'm not 100% sure this is a completely fair test because the papers are incredibly different and they each offer something that the other doesn't. So I'll try and break it down a little bit and explain why. To try and sum this up, all three papers have performed exceptionally well, but they've performed in very, very different ways. The Platinum Bright, which was our control paper, has basically done what we expected it to. It's printed the colours, the rendition absolutely perfectly, but this was the paper that we actually set up to do so. All the other papers had to follow this paper's settings, so you know, perhaps it wasn't necessarily a fair test. Each of the images, as I say, I'm really happy with. The Platinum Brighter is the best. I think it's probably the smoothest of all the images as well, and it shows the overall scene as the scene was probably better than any of the other papers. But it doesn't mean the other papers are bad. They've just brought something different to the table. What we've got with the metallic luster is a beautiful scene. It's very, very smooth. I love the pearlescence of it. That really, you know, it does work on this particular paper. It's a very, very clean print, very, very smooth. I mean, it's a nice print, but it's just not quite the same as the brighter paper. But I think where this one would really score is with a very, very bright image, something like a rainbow where you've got a lot of colours of the spectrum there. I think that would really work for that. And we'll try one of those later on just to have a look and see. The Legacy Gloss, this was the paper that I was really, really excited to try. I love the fact that it's a nice heavyweight 325 paper, and I was, expecting very, very big things from this. The fact that it's a, as they call it, a gloss finish, or it is really a luster, but they call it Legacy Gloss. but it's unglazed. And essentially, you know, there's the way this performs best, I think, is this has got the least reflection of any of them. I mean, don't get me wrong, none of them have a real heavy reflection, but this has got the least out of all of them. And it's, but it has got a visible, very slightly visible texture to it. And on a contrasty image like this, I'm not entirely sure that I actually want that particular texture in there. I much prefer the flat platinum brighter paper and a metallic luster for this particular image. But it's not to discount this particular paper would be really, really beneficial, but I think I'd go with something more of a painterly image, maybe something that I produce on a matte paper. I'd actually have a go with this Legacy gloss, because I do love the finish, but I wasn't expecting this finish. As I say, the texture is very, very minute. It really is, you know, almost hard to see. It's only under light that you can really see it well. But I just think it would favour a different type of image a little bit more than the one that we've used for this particular test. But that's why we do it, so we can find out what these papers do and which ones work. So to summarise, if you're looking to print a sort of a luster finish paper, something that's got a bit of contrast into it, Platinum Burrito, that's my tip for the top. We've done all our testing, we've got all our prints done, so which is the best paper? I'm going to break it down. Printing is a subjective thing, and you know, one person's view might be completely different to another person's view, and it's very much down to personal taste, how you see your image as a final product on paper. So just because these are my views doesn't mean that they're necessarily the 100% right ones. You guys might have your own views on paper, and you should experiment with paper, and you should try and see which works for you, because it's, as I say, a very personal thing. But in terms of my top papers, for the matte papers, I'm going to give the W to NST Bright White. I just can't fault this paper. I absolutely love it so much. It's got such a beautiful, very, very light text. You can barely even see it or feel this texture, but it just enhances a print so much. The colour rendition on it is spectacular. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than this paper. It's so, so good. The details are there, and it just makes any print that goes on it look superb. So I have to give the win there for matte papers to NST Bright White, which is it is my paper of choice, and I wasn't really surprised when it won, to be fair. Moving on to papers that are of luster finish, and basically anything that's contrasty, that's what I'd be printing on that paper. And I have to give the win on this one to Platinum Burrito. Again, it was the one I suspected would win. I've been using it for a long time, and I absolutely adore this paper. It has, you know, a completely different characteristic set to something like a matte paper, and you know, you have to love a luster paper to use it, really. But I do feel it adds so much more pop to images that have a lot of contrast, and I really believe it enhances them no end. Some of the images that I've printed onto matte papers in the past that I've not really been 100% happy with, printing them on the luster papers like the Brighter, they've come out perfectly, and they're just how I want them, and that's why I make sure I have a point of it. So that's the two papers that I would class as the absolute top ones. And then when it comes to texture papers, I have a slightly different view with this. I'm going to give the W to Cotton Etching, I think. It's incredibly close between Cotton Etching and Platinum Etching. They're both superb papers, and if you blindfolded me, I'd have a real job to pick them out to see which was which. I think the only real difference on it was just the level of texture on there. But for me, I think Cotton Etching, it just suited what I was trying to do more than ever, and I really liked it. So that's the one. I have to say, texture papers are probably the ones that I would use the least, but it's purely because of the type of pictures that I take. If I was taking a lot more woodland photography, I would certainly use texture paper a lot more, because it is absolutely superb for that type of image. But because of the things that I take, seascapes, a lot of things with light, I prefer maybe the smoother finishes, and that's why the others have won. But if I have to pick one overall winner, and this really surprised me, I didn't see any other paper winning this other than probably NST Bright White, but that hasn't happened. If I had to choose one paper that I had to print all my work on, and it had to be good for something that I'd print on a matte finish or I'd print on a luster paper, then I'd have to give it to Smooth Cotton, which is the matte finish. This paper was faultless. I mean, I have just never ever seen a paper that can take so many different types of images and produce them with absolute quality. The depth on this paper is nothing short of staggering. The Dmax on the paper is superb. The blacks are so deep, and the detail is just incredible. I mean, I was so shocked at how much I like this paper. The finish itself on there, it is incredibly smooth. It's literally like running your hand over silk. It's just amazing. And as I say, any image looks amazing on it. And I have to say, it's one that I'm going to be stocking for my own personal use now. I really am surprised. I thought NST Bright White would take the win. But if I had to have one for overall, it's smooth cotton. It's that good. I really recommend you try it. It's well worth it. If you're still sat on the fence on papers and you haven't made your mind up through this video, and I appreciate it's very hard to see the textures and everything on these whilst you're watching a video rather than actually having them in front of you, I'd highly recommend picking up test packs from Photospeed. What they do is they give you a range of test packs, and you can get one for luster finishes, one for matte finishes that are smooth, one for textured matte finishes, and so on and so on. They do a variety of different ones, and it's a superb way to choose a paper. You get to not only feel the papers and see how tactile they are, you can try various different ones and just see what suits an image and what suits your own personal taste. And for me, that's the best way to do it. Before I got all our papers for this particular test, I got 4 different packs from Photospeed, and I had a look through all of them and whittled down to my 8 particular favourites on this one, which we've tested. And I had a look at a few others and tried a few others, but these particular ones, these really suited our needs. So a test pack was absolutely invaluable for that. I mean, paper is something that's not particularly cheap if you buy good quality ones. So you want to get it right. So I'd really recommend picking up test packs. It will really help you. The next thing is obviously Photospeed offer the free ICC profiling, and I can't tell you just how much I'd recommend this. It will take your prints to the absolute next level, and you really shouldn't be considering printed on standard prints without doing an ICC profile. It's a very quick service. You simply print out your test cards, you send them to Photospeed, and as soon as they pick them up, they generally get them to you the next day via email, and you can upload them in seconds. It's really worth doing. It's a few seconds work, and the difference it makes is absolutely phenomenal. So that's something I'd highly recommend. Also, just on a side note, if you're doing printing, I'd highly recommend using a white background on your whichever processing engine you're using, Photoshop, Lightroom, etc. If you set the background to white, it gives you a really good, clear indication how your picture is going to look in print. And of course, make sure you do calibrate your monitor. It will make all the difference, and it really is. It's worth going that extra mile for your prints. I really hope you've enjoyed today. Maybe you've had a look at some papers that you've not necessarily tried before. I hope it's been valuable for you. If it has, please do hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. And, please do leave a comment. If you'd like to win one of these prints that we're doing today, I'm going to give away several of them. So the way to enter is to make sure you're subscribed, put a like on the video, and just leave a comment. Doesn't really matter what the comment is, although it'd be nice to hear which image you'd actually prefer. But yeah, we'll give away a few of these prints over the next couple of weeks, and I'll announce them on the next video. So please do leave a comment if you would like to win one of these prints. And thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you're going to enjoy some printing of your own now, and bring some of your images off the hard drive and let them fulfill their destiny by hanging on the wall. Take care. See you again.